This is Rick Malone for the San Francisco Symphony. "1907 started out like a normal year for Gustav Mahler. As director of the Vienna Court Opera, he was perpetually distracted, self-absorbed, and overworked. But early in the year, the rumblings of anti-Semitism that had surrounded his appointment became louder, and by the end of the summer, he'd been forced to resign. But that wasn't all. In July, his 4-year-old daughter Maria had died of scarlet fever and diphtheria, and he himself had learned that he suffered from a severe heart condition. Mahler was a dedicated hiker, cyclist, and swimmer, not to mention a fiery conductor. But at doctor's orders, he had to severely restrict all physical activity, stopping constantly to check his pulse and asking his wife Alma to listen to his heartbeat. Not surprisingly, it was work that pulled him out of his depression, specifically a little book of Chinese poetry that a friend had given him earlier in the year. It was called The Chinese Flute, and Mahler recognized that the delicacy and melancholy of the poems, even in German translation, would make an ideal song cycle. He immediately started making sketches and began serious work on them the next summer. But Mahler soon recognized that this would be no ordinary song cycle. It was becoming something larger and more cohesive, something, in fact, symphonic. The great conductor Bruno Walter, who was one of Mahler's assistants and close friends, recalled Mahler's describing the work as a symphony in songs. And in the end, he did call it the Song of the Earth, a symphony for tenor and contralto or baritone and orchestra. As a symphony, it would have been Mahler's 9th, but he was superstitious that, like Beethoven and Bruckner, he would die after finishing his 9th symphony. So he thought he'd put one over on the gods by giving this one a name instead of a number. And when he finished the symphony he did call number 9, he triumphantly told Alma that it was, of course, really the 10th and that the danger was past. But the gods weren't fooled, and Mahler died while he was working on the symphony he dared to call number 10. Das Lied von der Erde, the Song of the Earth, has 6 movements, with each of the first 5 based on a single poem. The first is Das Trinklied von Jammer der Erde, the drinking song of the earth's sorrow. It's by the 8th century Sichuan poet Li Taipo. Wine was one of his favorite subjects, and here he invites us to contemplate the brevity of human life and then to drain our goblets. At this point in his life, Mahler was in no mood for wistful melancholy. The song starts with an explosion of horn calls, followed by the cackle of sardonic laughter. The song is full of both bittersweet sounds and ugly ones, but no line appears twice the same way. And even the refrain of Dunkel ist das Leben, ist der Tod, life is dark, as is death, climbs the scale by a note each time it returns. And in this passage about the span of human life, tenor and violins have almost the same melody, but the tension is in how what seems to be a single line keeps splitting in two. The symphony is full of this sort of multiple vision. Throughout his life, Mahler balanced a lust for life with a fascination, almost a longing for death. But here, he almost tips the scales. He once asked Bruno Walter, "What do you think? Is it at all bearable? After hearing this, won't people want to do away with themselves?" End quote. The ferociousness of the drinking song is completely deflated by the second song's fatigued quiet. This is Der Einsame in Herbst, The Lonely Man in Autumn, by Changzi. At the beginning, it almost seems as if the oboe soloist is going to overshadow the baritone. And both soloists seem totally spent. It's only when he thinks of his favorite resting place that the singer's passion awakens. He makes an anguished plea to the Son of Love, "Will you never shine again?" But before he's even finished the line, Mahler drains him of hope by bringing back the bleak music from the opening. The next three songs are all by Li Taipo, and they form a three-part intermezzo of somewhat lighter thoughts. The first part is a poem called Von der Jugend, of youth. It's about friends chatting and drinking in a pavilion of green and white porcelain. And it's the first time in the piece that Mahler tries to make the orchestra sound Chinese. But under the bits of pentatonic melody and the ding of the triangle, it's all very Viennese. And in just a few moments, it's over. Von der Schönheit, of beauty, is more spacious. Of Youth was a mood piece, but this song flits back and forth from mood to mood, mirroring the poet's words about the heartbeats of the seductive young girls with their great yearning eyes. The song rises to a fiery gallop, only to sink back into a sultry languor. And the music keeps the erotic reverie going long after the words have failed. Der Trunkene im Frühling, the drunkard in spring, might be our friend from the first song, but this time he's in a very good mood. The The realization that spring is here has softened him. The violin solo is the quintessential Mahler pastoral tune, but in the end, the drunken retreats from his own tenderness to the safety of his wine flask. While the music returns to the bright sound of the opening. The final movement is actually 2 songs, and together they make up almost half the length of the symphony. The poets Meng Kaojian and Wang Wei were actually friends, and they wrote The Farewell and He Rose from the Horse to each other. The Farewell begins with a melancholy oboe melody over a deep tolling, followed by a consoling melody in the violins. These first few measures contain all the basic material for the movement. The melody devolves into silence, and the song emerges. This is the refrain of the final movement. Before it's over, the initial phrase will return 9 times. They vary widely in tone and mood, in key and in scale, but they all serve what's called a developing variation. Each new appearance of the original melody takes the movement to a new place. One of the most lovely phrases in Das Lied von der Erde is this one, about the rising moon. Where the baritone, clarinets, and cellos have almost the same melody, almost at the same time, and again, the tension comes from where they part and where they come back together. The break between the 2 poems is marked by a broad orchestral interlude, which is also a funeral march, one of Mahler's signatures. The music for the second poem is a condensed reprise of the first. It's a great hymn to spring, the beloved earth, bringing the new melody back in a still more beautiful form. The voice and instruments reiterate the word ewig, forever, until sound and silence become one. The funeral march and the finale that close this piece may sound like a farewell, but Mahler's song of and to the earth is, in the end, a song of love and of life. This is Rick Malone for the San Francisco Symphony.